Hey, brother Yusuf, I don't see. Turn your mic and stuff on. I don't see your Turn on your phone. I mean your camera and stuff. It says your devices are not connected. So turn on your turn on. Only thing that's connected is me right now. Okay, there you are. I'm gonna add you to the stage. Okay, turn on your camera. Turn your camera on.
1 minute, I have to be right back. But my camera works fine.
Okay. For everybody that's listening, just hold on for a second. We're connecting. Give us a second. And let me connect the other programs while he's getting settled. Okay. Everybody should be connecting up on the other platforms. Okay, I see you guys on all the other platforms. Let me cut this off.
All right.
Oh, let me switch. Okay, let me cut me off camera. They just see me. Let me cut my camera off. Okay, let me cut me off. Let me take me down. Put him here. Okay, Brother Yusuf, you can start whenever you are ready. I'm going to give you full screen.
Are we ready to go?
Yes, you can start whenever you're
ready. Okay. Assalamu alaikum. Everybody, we got to get used to the new streaming program. It's not as easy, or it's easy, but it's not like the other one where we kind of have a comfortable, rhythm. So yeah, we're back to the news this week. I had a little bit more time last week, just was taking only questions. This one we'll do a lot of questions too at the end, but I wanted to get into some things here that are American centric, if you will, that happened in the week, as we commonly do here. So with that being said, we had three major Supreme Court decisions that were handed out. Two of them really major, and I feel are death blows for the future of this country, for people who are around the world who are worried about America and the military campaigns. That stuff's going to be few and far between if this country continues to rot. Not saying the military campaigns obviously were good. It's just a symptom of a dying nation, but the nation is dying 100%, on the inside, and we're going to look at that going on. The first one, though, however, is a little bit more social. This was the only one that went down this week that I could actually say was good. The other two were just absolutely horrendous and were just a slap in the face to the American people, to the history of this country. But the first one, there's actually something that went in favor of decency. But behind it, as always, there's hidden indecency that we are going to explore. Now, they upheld the right for states to ban men who believe they're women from competing with women in sports. Anyone who's got half a brain. Now, we're going to talk about female sports in a minute. They're not what you seem. The reason they push female sports so much, we're going to see the agenda and why behind it. As always with these people, it's going to be something with ill intent. But let's pretend for a second, for the sake of discussion, that women's sports is a good thing. Should a man who decides one day he's going to shave his beard, he's going to take some hormones, he is going to grow his hair long, he's going to wear lipstick, makeup, eyeliner, get his jawbone filed down, should be allowed to go out there and compete with a female in an athletic competition. I think anyone with half a brain who doesn't have an agenda behind him would say that's unfair. For years, the feminists cried that there was no difference between the sexes. None at all. The sexes are basically indistinguishable. Men and women, they're exactly the same. We obviously know that not to be true or not to be the case. I mean, there's differences in temperament. There's differences in IQs. There's differences in ability to learn certain things. There's differences in memory, perception, emotional control. Also physical, obviously, patience, differences across the board. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala designed us to be that way, to complement each other. What one group is typically strong at, the other group is weak at, and vice versa. And we've covered those things at detail. But if you were to have a competition where you were having something that's strength-based, running, jumping, things of the sort, a woman's obviously going to have no shot at competing with a man. And in fact, we've seen the records being broken in powerlifting, in swimming. They had a guy out there. This dude's bigger than me. I mean, this is a big dude. I mean, he's a 6 foot plus. Was out there swimming, with the girls and killing them, obviously, not literally, but figuratively. And they showed that his male record when he was competing against men was horrendous. The guy was like ranked 400 or something. But when he started competing with ladies, guess what? He was the king or queen in this context. And he was dominating them. And of course, we saw in powerlifting, we saw this in the Olympics. I can't remember which country it was. It was a North African nation. They let the lady go out there in boxing. Now, this is really when the sickness becomes a problem. You already know how I feel about combat sports. We covered them off and on the last 2 weeks. It's human cockfighting. It's totally barbaric and beneath us and the dignity of creatures made by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We should be capable of much better. But they had a woman from, I think it was Algeria. It was a North African nation, and she was out there boxing girls. And they claimed that this was someone who was converted at birth, so therefore it was really a woman. I cannot remember the whole story on it, but it was horrendous watching the differences as this man was out there hitting these ladies in the face. That would be assault in any other area of society. I remember years ago in MMA, talking about that last week. In MMA, they had a woman who was fighting one of these things. And the guy just destroyed her. I mean, it wasn't even fair. It was bloodbath. Her whole face was bruised and jawbone broken and things like that. It wasn't in the UFC. It wasn't in the big leagues. They're not inhumane enough to allow it there, at least yet. But it was going on in the minor leagues of mixed martial arts. And it was just the guy who's dressed as a lady is out there mutilating this young girl. And it was horrendous. And it's something, again, that needed to stop. So there's that. I mean, that's obviously a good thing to ban them. Now, women's sports in general, we're going to look at here now. We're going to see there's something quite sinister, as I mentioned in the opening, going on there. So, again, I've talked about a lot, and those of you who are familiar with my work, of the anti-birth, anti-family agenda. And they cloak this agenda in a variety of things. They cloak it in climate change. Just recently, I saw this week on social media, someone had captured an image from Europe. And it was a white couple. Of course, it's going to be a white couple because they did it with another couple. They'd be called racist, so they don't want that. So they use the white couple with the baby. And it's like, you can choose this, or you can choose the planet. It's like your births are killing the planet. It's not the multinational corporations dumping waste and pollution. No. It's not India and China dumping garbage and waste directly in the rivers and streams. No. It's your baby. It's you being a father or a mother. That's what's killing the planet. Now, the global warming is a hoax. We've kind of covered that off and on here. It's one of the big tenets of the left. The planet is not heating up more than normal cycles, but pollution is a big deal. Plastic being in everything is a big deal. And if you look at Western nations who take the brunt of this from the fanatical leftists, it's always us that's blamed. But yet India is a big pile of garbage. I mean, India, they have no waste control or government or environmental consciousness at all. They dump the waste everywhere. China is very similar, but you never hear them saying that because the useful idiots are going to come out because the goal is to deindustrialize the West. It's to lower our standard of living and bring us down. And they want to elevate China and these totalitarian type states where people have zero rights and zero rebellion against the governments and things like that, where they're easy to control and manage. They want that to come up and become the new norm. So they come after us, obviously, for it. Well, we have the most cleanest air in the world of any industrial nation. Obviously, places in Africa and South America with less industrialization have cleaner air than we do. But compared to industrialized nations, we are very, very clean overall in this regard. But no, again, it's your children that are doing this. It's not that. It's not all this. No, it's your kids. So they use in all their agendas, they tie that in. They said for years that we shouldn't have kids. And then they said, oh, well, because you're not having kids, we're going to flood you with adult males ages 18 to 34, and we're going to bring these people in and put them on welfare, and that's going to fix the birth rate problems. We'll get to that issue. As always, that one's a kind of underlying theme we cover a lot here too. So you have those problems. So everything, again, tied into the anti-birth, anti-family, the homosexual agenda that we were just covering and we've covered on here in details is the same thing. The trans agenda. Why is the trans agenda a big thing? Because they've done a lot of studies. They understand that men, if they're going to do homosexual acts, are going to be more likely to do it with a trans woman, because at least 80% looks like a woman, than they would be with a man with a beard that looks like myself, as an example. They wouldn't like that. That's too masculine. It's not what they're attracted to. They're attracted to women, but they kind of get you through trickery to accept homosexuality through a variety of masks. Homosexuality also lowers birth rates. If someone has conducted hormone therapy to become trans, that person most likely, pretty much 100%, will never have children again. This is not possible. If they've had the operation, they're never going to have children again. So you see it there. So you see it here with female sports. Female sports, when I was growing up, was kind of a niche thing. It was something for the girls to do in the summer with other girls and have fun and everything, but it's become a business. You are seeing networks that are part of the brotherhood, like ESPN, one of those magical 6 companies that owns everything. They're under the Disney, ABC umbrella. ESPN decided this year they would put the WNBA in one of their prime spots ahead of Major League Baseball. Now, the ratings comparisons, people always say, oh, it's about money. It's always about money. Well, no, it's actually not, because Major League Baseball draws more live viewers by far than the WNBA does. The WNBA is if it wasn't for the NBA, would be out of business. The Men's Basketball Association, or the National Basketball Association is officially called, the NBA is propping up the WNBA. It's subsidizing it. The WNBA loses money. It doesn't make money. Women's sports in colleges, just here in my state of South Carolina, the South Carolina women's basketball team in college won the national championship multiple times. Well, guess what? The terrible men's team of the University of South Carolina made more money and is subsidizing the female sports. So they are using the popular male sports to subsidize and keep the women's sports functional, or else they would be out of business. Men are not watching this. The majority of women are not watching this. There is certain demographics we'll come to in a second who are watching this, but it's not very big. So why? Why all this emphasis? Why every time I turn on ESPN are they covering women's sports, which are getting such low ratings? Well, a lot of big reasons as to why, and I just covered it, the birth agenda. So again, women who engage in excessive training, who build their bodies the same way male athletes do to compete at the highest levels, are less likely to do what? To conceive, to have birth. There is a condition called amenorrhea. 60% of competitive female athletes experience irregular or completely absent periods, which is what this condition is. If you do not ovulate, natural conception is pretty much impossible without medical interventions. They can kill two birds with one stone here. They can make the women infertile, not able to conceive. And then later in life, if they decide to conceive, guess what? You got to pay them money. Funny how that works. You have to go to their doctors and their clinics, and they'll go and they'll try to help you out with this because you've ruined your body. The woman is not made to be a hunter. She is not made to be out there competing with other women to kick a ball or to throw a ball in a hoop. These are men activities. Men are made to do these. Men actually get natural benefits from exercise and strenuous activity. We're made for it. Women, however, are not. High intensity training, again, while it's beneficial to us, it hinders female reproduction. It lowers body fat, which is essential for healthy children. It causes cortisol spikes, stress, inflammation. It also can shorten the second half of the menstrual cycle, which means that eggs are less likely to implant. So again, they're marketing it for a reason. These guys don't care about money. They have more money than you and I ever will be because they get the money printers. They can create our currencies. The people that run these, who are connected to the bankers who can do that. Money's not an obstacle for them. You know, ESPN is an example who's responsible for pushing this female sports agenda. ESPN is basically a welfare child of the television industry. If you subscribe to Hulu Live TV, YouTube Live TV, any of these streaming services, what you will find is that they have a huge price now. It's $90-something a month to watch television. People cut the cord, remember that movement, because it was too expensive to purchase cable television. Well, now the streaming services are just as bad, and in some cases worse than the cable. So what happens is for every 50 channels you don't want, you have to pay for them, for the 5 that you do. So a lot of people who don't even watch sports, they're paying that part of that $90 to $100 for ESPN. So ESPN makes its money whether you pay or not. They're going to get paid. They can put whatever they want on there. They can lose money on advertising revenue and serve the agenda and still get paid for it because everything in the system is designed that way. It's here to continue their dominance and to continue their agenda. So they're promoting something that is crippling female health. And then, you know, of course, this transgendered issue is men coming into those sports and threatening that. So they're making this look like this is some major victory for morality, you know, major victory for humanity. When the main question that's not even being asked is should women be competing like this? Should women be doing sports? You go and you look again, nothing, as I said, is more than the attack on the family. And again, if you look at what's happening with the women, most of the players identify in the WNBA as what? LGBTQ, lesbian. They identify as lesbians, over 60%. You know, last I saw, if you watch a WNBA game or you see any of this stuff, you're going to be like, oh man, all of them are lesbians. They all are masculine. Most of these women, they're extremely masculine. The way they talk, the way they carry themselves, very masculine. So again, this is part of the agenda. Should our girls run? Yeah, absolutely. You know, women can get benefits from exercise. You see in parts of the world in the Middle East where the weather is bad and, you know, for years they didn't allow women to go outside and ride bikes or do these type of things, which again is not our religion. Women should be allowed to exercise moderately. Everybody should get up and move. It's bad for your heart to sit down and be stagnant. But strenuous, again, athletic training. And these jobs, also police officers, nurses. I covered nurses right when I first started working on this platform a few years ago. when I had Sheikh Ibrahim Jamali with me. It was my first ever lecture I did on feminism and modern day birth rates and things like that. And I covered nurses specifically. I used them because the strenuous lifestyle of nurses causes most of them to become infertile over time because they're on their feet, they're stressed, they're moving back and forth, patient to patient, long shifts, long hours. It's affecting their fertility. This is again proof that your creator made you for certain functions. He made you a certain way. You're made to be this way. You go against that, always there's going to be consequences. Always. When you play with nature, you play with Allah's will, you play with how Allah has designed you. And if you're an atheist, you're going to come to the same conclusion. If you don't believe in God, but you believe in evolution, you're going to come to the same exact spot. That evolution made it this way. So whether you're like us or that, you're still going to have the same conclusion. Women are not made for this strenuous activity, and that is being lost in this discussion about should men be competing against women. No, men should not be, but should women be competing either? And I think we have the answers as to why they're marketing it, why there's such a heavy push on it. So that was the first of the three big Supreme Court rulings that we got this week. And as usual, the three liberal women on the Supreme Court, we're going to learn about them a little bit more here in a minute. They all were the ones that dissented against this, but everyone else was for it. So then we had the second one that I heard about. Now, this is not the order they were actually delivered. This one was delivered second. This one here was delivered on Monday morning, was that the court had acted to eliminate late mail-in voting. So late mail-in voting is now upheld. It's the law of the land. I mean, we've seen this time and time again. We know how this story ends. There is no argument that can be made except for the one they've tried, which is the military ballots, and I'll get to that in a second. Oh, well, the military wouldn't be able to vote. You're disenfranchising them. Well, why don't you just have them vote early? How hard is it to fill out a ballot on an army base and mail it in? That's easily solvable. It's not a problem here. We know why they want late mail-in voting. Because the election system, as I've covered here time and time again, is corrupt to the bone. It's made to be corrupt. And they're going to continue to allow it to be corrupt. The first time, I've been talking about this for decades, that they were doing this, because it was apparent. I'd be watching elections when I was in my late teens and early 20s in the state of North Carolina, where I grew up. And we have an area in North Carolina known as Raleigh. Raleigh, Durham, Chapel Hill. They call it the Triangles, where a lot of businesses, where a lot of research is, universities. Three major North Carolina universities, North Carolina State, UNC Chapel Hill, and then Duke Medical, the private university. Massive tuition costs there, high-level degrees if you get from Duke University. This area is notoriously liberal. When I went to Durham, which is where Duke University is the last time, I had never seen anything for Joe Biden during the run-up to the 2020 election. I didn't see anything. I saw no Joe Biden signs in yards. I mean, I didn't know anyone that was voting for Joe Biden. Black, white, there were some women there, yeah, as usual, who said he said some nice things. And that's the only thing that affected their decision. But most overwhelming people said absolutely not. Now, people can say, oh, well, you live in a conservative area. That's not true. I grew up in a military town. It's pretty mixed. When Barack Obama ran in 2008 and in 2012, I was living in Saudi Arabia. I was not here during that time. But I can speak firsthand on what I witnessed when Obama was running. Obama stuff was everywhere. You had people of all sides, all walks of life, fell for the Obama hoax. The same way people fell for the Trump hoax. They believed it was change. It was something good. And you couldn't go out without seeing something about Barack Obama on the streets. But when Joe Biden ran, nothing, zero. There was no major support for him. But when you went to Raleigh and Durham in those areas, the people up there are really, really fanatical leftists. College students who are some of the biggest left-leaning people in this country. When I went to college, I remember a guy asked me, he said, what did you learn in college. And besides the usual chemistry and biology, which I was taking for my associates in science, the only thing I could recall learning in college was it was okay for men to be gay. That was a big theme. It was covered in so many of the courses. Oh, did we mention it's okay to be gay? You found even when I took 2 classes on religion, I took Old Testament and New Testament to further my understanding of the Christian religion for the purposes of Dawah. And I'm going through my Old Testament class, and we're going through the Bible in chronological order, the Old Testament, the Tanakh. And I'm noticing that, wait a minute, something's missing. What story? Wait a minute, Lot wasn't there. We skipped totally over Lot. Of course they did. They left it out. They left it all out. And this is what universities do. They crank up. It's like it's a liberal baby-making factory when you go to college. They're just churning you out, like the masjids are doing now with liberal Muslims, just cranking them out. Because Democrat people or people who are left-leaning typically don't reproduce. They believe in climate change. They believe in homosexuality. They believe that having babies is a sin, that's bad for the earth, it's bad for the third world, whatever moral argument they try to make. So they create and reproduce through the university system of indoctrination. So Biden was very big there. I just had to mention that, kind of understand what we're dealing with here with that area. So I noticed, again, when I was in my early teens, that Raleigh would always bring their election numbers in last. You'd see all these other cities are turning their stuff in on time, and we got the tallies going up. And then people be like, oh, well, you got to wait for Raleigh, Durham, Chapel Hill. And then guess what? They would just have enough votes, just enough to swing the election to the leftist. This happens multiple times. People all over are familiar with this. In the state of Georgia, it's Atlanta. They wait until the end. Oh, we need about 340,000, 50,000, something like that. Oh, there it is. They're late. They came in. And when the COVID scam came out, one of the big things they were able to do was extend this to where they didn't have to just say they found a ballot box somewhere, they found these extra votes. They would say, well, we got to wait days for the mail-in ballots to come in. And guess what? The mail-in ballots always went to the leftist. Always. And in some cases, like in California recently, the Indian lady out there, 100% to bring her up to the runoff where she was buried by a regular election. But when the ballots came in from the mail, 100%. We used to always hear when I was going to school, well, America's got free elections. We're the best in the world. In Cuba, Castro gets 99% of the vote. And in Iraq, Saddam gets 99% of the vote. And Stalin used to get 99% of the vote. Because that's what happens in other places. But it never happens in America because we have a good system. Well, you're seeing it in real time. When Joe Biden ran back to that one to show this kind of comparison of how much mail-in ballots matter, he received 81 million votes. It's 81,263,000 and a couple else. I don't remember the exact last part of it, but 81, give me 1,263,000. Guess how many other Democrats had gotten? Well, Hillary Clinton got 65 million in 2016. People say, oh, well, it's population difference. We'll get to that. Barack Obama in 2012 was extremely popular. It's not as much as 08. He was more popular in 08 than he was in 12. In 12, people started realizing that the facade was falling, that he was just another establishment guy. He got 65 million too. Hillary got slightly more because the population increased, like 65,500,000. Obama got 65,200,000, something like that. Very close. Kamala Harris got 75 million and lost by 2 million to Trump's 77. But Biden, 81 million. And people, oh, that's just because there was such a protest and backlash against Trump. Then why did Trump get more votes the second time he ran? His third election overall. Now, we do know that during the Biden administration, 2 things happened. The COVID scam got to its peak where the mail-in voting was coming in. And then also, we saw the border opened up like never before. We saw the overseas immigration and these green card lotteries and all this other stuff went up too. We saw too many people being brought in rapidly. I mean, we saw changing demographics, whole cities being flipped upside down. So there was more people that came in after Biden was in. So you would see population increases could be responsible for the fact that Obama was 65 million, Hillary was 65 million, Kamala Harris was 76, because illegals are voting. We know that. And anytime Congress or the Supreme Court can act on this, they don't, because they want the illegals to vote. They want to have the dead guys voting. We saw this with Obama. We saw this with Bush. We saw this with, recently with Biden. Dead guys were voting. It's a common trick. You just go pull dead guys with their social securities from the grave, and they go out to the polls and then they cast their votes. And this was huge with Biden. It's the reason he went from that 65 million mark that had been kind of a Democratic staple around that number to just all of a sudden 16 million more. I mean, we saw when Joe Biden won states that the voting curves went like this and then they went straight up, which is statistically impossible to have that high a percentage. Like I mentioned, the Indian lady in California was the same thing. So what little integrity our elections had, they didn't have any with me for quite some time. What little integrity they had is gone. It's just done. Again, let's wait 2 weeks for the election to be decided. And here comes, bam, there it is. They were down 20,000. Here's 25,000. 98% went to the leftist. And this is just catastrophic for the future of this country. When you look at the left-wing policies that I've covered here, they don't work. We're seeing it now with Zohran Mamdani. We see it with the state of California. Everything is expensive. I just got back from the state of California a couple of weeks ago. The gas was almost $6 a gallon, where it was $3.50 in the state of South Carolina. That's with the phony Iran war that we've covered here and how they're playing with this, with the prices. I mean, it's like, imagine trying to survive where every single little thing is taxed so much. It's double. And I explained, this is going to tie into our last point about the liberal policy of unlimited immigration and then taking care of the unlimited immigrants. So if every year you're bringing in 500,000 to 1 million immigrants, they're mostly half of them are going on welfare. That means every year you need more tax money to pay for that. So you're going to have to get it from somewhere. You get it from all over the place. You're getting your roads now. There's more people driving on. They're more crowded. They're getting destroyed. Road upkeep goes up. So you have to tax people more to pay for that. You have places like California, Oregon, Washington State, all of these. They're gone. They're never coming back. Once something goes blue, it's never going red again. Very few cases do you see that. Pennsylvania being one of them, which always kind of flip back and forth. Ohio, same thing. Florida was heavily blue during Obama. And then, of course, it's gone back to being a deep red state. But we're seeing one after another, state after state is becoming a blue state, which means there's zero chance of it ever becoming red. Like New York, no way. There's too much corruption in the elections. California, Oregon, Washington, no way. It used to be we knew Minnesota was like this. But now, geez, it's just to the point of insanity. And it's going to lead to a uniparty where you're going to see like different branches of liberalism branching off like you do in Europe, where even something that's considered slightly moral and conservative is going to still be left-wing by modern-day standards, because that's called the Overton window. They shift the Overton window election cycle after election cycle to where the more farther time you go, the more that far left now is normal. And then the super far left is the extreme. And an example of this with Bill Clinton, you compare Bill Clinton in 98, got in office in 92. You compare Bill Clinton's leftism to Barack Obama's. Barack Obama was the fringe left when Bill Clinton got in. He became the normal left when he got in. Then you see, Joe Biden was farther left than Obama. And then you saw Kamala Harris was farther left than Biden. You see basically Zohran Mamdani and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez are more far left than Kamala. And you've seen the Republicans, how they've changed. George Bush would never say the phrase gay marriage or any of those things. Then Donald Trump comes out. It's a de facto position now. Yeah, of course I'm for it. And that's how they shift psychology over time. They get you. We've covered that at length here, the way they did this with Zena, with marriage. It's an Overton window shifting over time, more and more to the left. And all you're going to get in the future is just different versions of leftism. Blue states will be blue states forever. They're never going back, because you allow this type of level of corruption in your election. So when the people get angry that they're paying $6 for gas, that there's too many immigrants coming in, all these things, you can't do anything about it, because the election is going to be rigged. And even if the people rose up, it's going to be thrown out. So you're never going to change things anymore. With this right here, further solidifies it, along with the last major ruling that has come, which the single most destructive court ruling in the history of this nation just happened, and that was birthright citizenship. I've been watching this since I was in my teens. I saw the writing on the wall. I knew back then, just from reading newspapers and libraries, pre-internet era, where the country was going, what was going on, and it was horrific back then. And that was, again, I'm getting up there in age, was over 25 years ago. She's only 27 years ago, since I was in my 20s, and even more since I was a teen. And I knew there had to be a day coming where this either had to be eliminated or this country was done. Well, this Supreme Court, particularly Amy Coney Barrett and Roberts, they went with the Democrats to give it a 5-4 victory. They upheld restrictions on Donald Trump's executive order. Now, Donald Trump never intended to end this. This is, again, if you followed me, this is the game. Donald Trump is not a saint here. He's not some savior who loves America and wants to save the country. He did this because he promised he would do this, because he knew people wanted it done to get him elected. He knew good and well that this was exactly what was going to happen. And then they were going to kick the can down the road. 10, 15 more years would go by. The country would be so wrecked at that point, it wouldn't even be discussed. It'd be that over the window I talked about, the shifting. Because Donald Trump got elected first and foremost because the American people were disgusted with the immigration system. We were tired of it. We were tired of watching our tax dollars go to the things we're going to talk about later on here. We're tired of it. And Donald Trump came down that elevator and he attacked the immigration issue head on. He wasn't politically correct. People responded to that. It was the same conversations that were happening among all racial groups who have original American stock, who have ties to this country. We all were tired of it. Everyone wanted it to end. So he knew this was his ticket to get in there, which is the way people would love him. So he knew this was going to happen. You know, they were going to throw this out. But he'll now be able to say, look, I tried. I did what I told you I was going to do, but the system is corrupt. And we're going to get into this. So they kept saying the language of the 14th Amendment. So let's look at the 14th Amendment, what it actually was for, and how they have used it to wreck, this nation. So in 1868, following the American Civil War, which ended in April of 1865, the 14th Amendment became the cornerstone of the United States Constitution. It became an amendment, obviously. It granted citizenship to all persons born and naturalized in the U.S. and prohibited states from denying anyone liberty, property, or equal protection under the law. This was a response to a couple of things. There was the famous Dred Scott case. Dred Scott was a black slave who ran away, justifiably so. He went to the North and he sought protection under the government. And he was ordered by Justice Taney that he had to be returned, as he was not a human being. He was property. He had to be returned to the South, and that no laws of an African were going to be respected as slave in the United States. So you had that. You had all the newly freed slaves that now had nothing. They have no home. They had no cultural identity outside of what they had formed on the plantations and in the slave fields. So you had something. You had a moral question. As the United States did very good in ending slavery on moral grounds, there was not a lot more to it than that. It wasn't 100% their intentions, even though it would be great if it was. And people, historians, like to tell you it was. There's a lot going on into that, but overall, a moral good happened from the Civil War, and 800,000 Americans, African Americans as well, dying in that conflict, was that we ended this institution. In the Western world, it was finally over. And you had all these people. What are you going to do with them? There's 23 million of them. You know, where do they belong to? And it was decided that we'll make an amendment to the Constitution to state that those people are now American citizens. They are responsible for equal protection under the law as any white, Caucasian, American, or any other American at the time had. They would be fully American in every sense because they were born here. And the actual language that was used is right here. I've got it. All persons born or naturalized in the United States, and this is the key phrase coming up, and subject to the jurisdiction thereof, are citizens of the United States and the state wherein they reside. No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, property without due process of law, nor deny any person without its jurisdiction the equal protection of the law. This ended on law any form of racial discrimination. Now, did people still discriminate against people of all colors? I mean, white people were discriminated against, black people obviously have a history in this country of being discriminated against. Did it eliminate things that go on in the mind and the heart? No. But there was a law there now that was there to ensure that these former descendants of slaves would have an equal shot. And it took a long time, obviously, to undo prejudices that existed within the populations to make that a reality. But in the law, if you can prove discrimination, you'll win. Any company that's discriminated against someone based on the color of their skin, both white and black, has been ordered to pay huge amounts of money in payouts. So we took a step in the right direction toward racial reconciliation with this. This, as you can see by the language, was never intended for a Chinese birth tourist. This language was never intended for an Indian birth tourist or a South American birth tourist. To these parasites that literally their plan is to come in here for two things. They have the baby here. They will then get the baby paid for by our tax, because the first thing they're going to say is, I'm illegal. I don't have any insurance. I don't have money. You have to pay for this baby, which raises the cost of us who do. No one ever wants to talk about that. And then secondly, now they can say, well, I'm too poor to feed my own child, so I need food stamps to do it. And we're going to get to those numbers here in a minute because it's frightening what's going on here. This language was to grant citizenship to people who deserved it. It was here for people who had no home, who had been stripped from their homelands, both by the tribes in Africa as well as by the slave traders. These are people that deserved dignity and humanity. And now these evil, disgusting human beings have twisted this to allow these protections to go to Chinese, birth tourists, Indian, Russian, all of them are doing it. And how much is this a problem for the United States? Well, according to the recent data from 2024, 53%, over half, of immigrant-led households are on some form of welfare, 53%. 37% of American households. So in Americans, it's still too high. We have to clean up our own house here as well. But you see with immigrant groups, disproportionately, they are using welfare, because what kind of immigrants are we taking? We are taking the ones I just described, who are going to come into the country 8-9 months pregnant, show up at the hospital and say, you pay for me. And of course, the American people end up paying for that in the long run. We're the ones that pay the higher healthcare costs for this. And it's being abused overall. Now, this is a national security risk. It's not only a financial burden on the people of this country, but it's also a serious national security risk as well. 23% in the same year of births in this country were to foreign women. These are not, people who are American citizens who came from a previously designated foreign background. No. This is almost 1 in 4 of our births are to someone who has no business being here, who has no business giving birth on our money in our country and being entitled to American benefits. This is a disaster, and it's going to continue. It's why our rent is so high. It's why our healthcare costs are so high. These corporations, again, at the end of the day, are laughing it up over this because they're using our money to fund our own destruction and enrich them at the same time. It's a win-win. Chinese recently, they came out and said they've got 1 million with an M. Why not 1 billion? Maybe there one day, God willing. Sarcasm there, of course. 1 million Chinese living in China have the United States passport. What sane nation allows this? When I went overseas and I worked in the Gulf and I created a bank account, literally it took so long that there were 2 people that came in to create a bank account sitting at the desk next to mine. It was an open area, so I knew what they were doing. They knew what I could hear. It took 2 times as long to finish all the forms I had to fill out, because what was the government doing? I was signing off my authority for the government to look in my Bahraini bank account. So they knew how much I was making. They knew how much I had in there. Because you know what? If you're an American and you make a certain amount of money, even if you don't live here, you have to pay taxes. Or guess what? When you want to renew your passport again, you're not going to be allowed to do that. We are basically tax slaves, no matter where we live. But yet 1 million people in China, and I'm sure these are people of high means, some of them low means. And I guarantee the IRS is not doing that to them. I guarantee they're allowed to live over there, build up money. Then guess what? They'll come back here. They'll get Social Security. I mean, imagine again another scenario. If you had a foreign army invade the country and they brought women in and had babies here, we would be giving citizenship to the literal children of a foreign army. This is insanity. There is no argument that would win on this. We witnessed the final nail in the coffin, in my opinion, of the United States as a good place to live. We are going to continue to descend into the depths of hell. And it's going to get worse and worse. You'll never see China doing this. You never see Japan even doing this. You never see Saudi doing this. You never see Egypt doing this. You never see any normal country doing this. Now, some Western Europe, because they're suicidal up there as well, they're doing it. Canada, I'm not too familiar. I think they have similar, but not as open as ours. But it's just unbelievable that we have justices sitting on a chair and a bench, and they would agree that this is something that needs to continue. Now, if Trump truly cared, which, like I said earlier, no. He can say, I tried, I did everything in my power. He can basically use the Immigration and Nationality Act, Section 212F. What does that state? Well, it states that a president can restrict any foreigner he chooses under the guise of national security. So at this point, the only way to save this country is if this president cared, which again, he doesn't. He will not do this, mark my words. You just simply ban all immigration. You ban all tourism. You ban everything until people can figure it out. Let the hotel owners start losing money. Let all the agencies that prosper off of this start losing money. And then I guarantee you there'll be some changes. You know, that's how you would fix it. You know, because then those people would start lobbying to get rid of the birthright citizenship so they can get some of their business back from tourism. But that will never happen. But he could stop it if he wants, because the president has those powers. You deem this as a national security risk, and particularly the countries that do it the most, which are China, India does it, Russia. These places immediately banned, not coming here anymore, period. Banning women who are pregnant, obviously pregnant. Limiting the duration of the visas. Those are other things that you can do, but the president has the power. We'll see, obviously, if he's going to do this. Now, if you want to change it, as they're talking about in the media, in the Constitution, which you don't have to, because as I read, the language is there. It's just that the courts will not act. You got to get basically 2/3 of the House and Senate. That's not going to happen. Not with the mail-in balloting that I just talked about earlier. You're never going to see that. 38 of 50 states then must approve. That's never going to happen. You know, California, Oregon, Washington, New York, Minnesota, the entire Northeast, none of them are ever going to agree to something like this. So you're going to see, again, you know, no chance there. The country's finished. We're slowly going to die. Things are going to get more expensive. It's going to continue. The crime's going to continue to go up. Housing will never come down, because why would it? When you've got waiting lists to get houses that are $23.50 a month to rent that are not even worth 15, you know, because you're going to have Section 8s. You're going to have these agencies, these Catholic charities, all these businesses that make money giving these people homes. You find all the time, like what happened recently, they removed the temporary protective status for Haitians. They had an earthquake, and they've been in the country for 14 years, and they're having mortgages. How? The average American has to go through security, credit, have this deposits, loopholes and hurdles to, if they can even afford the money to pay the installments. But you see people that don't even have citizenship are automatically having mortgages. You see these H-1Bs with a huge salaries some of them are getting. They're already having mortgages, you know, having homes. You know, the businesses like this. They want this to continue. This is an economic zone. Cut it up into pieces and sell it to the highest bidder. That's the goal. That's the end. But at the same time, we've lost our country. Law and order doesn't exist. You know, you go down now, I mean, you're seeing cities being transformed overnight, areas where no one speaks any English. Majority of these I mentioned before are men in some cases, which is never healthy for a society to introduce military-age men to it. It messes up the demographics of male-female, where you've got way more men than women, and you're going to have Native Americans who are struggling to have a partner, to have a wife, to build a family, things like that. And of course, the men of those immigrants who don't have the financial means to attract a modern day Western woman with all her needs, they're going to resort to crime. We already see this in Europe. The rapes are through the roofs. Sweden has some of the highest rape numbers in the history of that country since they started welcoming in these people. England, same thing. You're seeing it in Austria. Every year the numbers just go up. The rapes just keep increasing, because you're bringing in 80% disproportionately men, 18 to 34. And they're not working, most of them. If they are, it's street crime, it's hustle type jobs, nothing that's actually benefiting the people that live in these societies. And from an Islamic perspective, you see, you know, all these masjids promoting immigration because they see this as a good thing, because it means that more Muslims are going to be coming into the country. And we can go to any masjid and see how tribal they are, as we've covered here many times. And you see, is that really a good thing? Shouldn't the masjids that exist be ran by people who are of the country that the masjid is in, not masjids that have their allegiances to foreign governments? You see in our masjid here, you never see anyone who is happy to be an American. And Islam, of course, we follow the law. You know, boundaries and flags shouldn't mean anything to us. But these people are more than happy to fly the Moroccan flag. They're more than happy to fly the flag of whatever their designated territorial boundary has dictated for them. They're happy with that. They don't want to be here. They want the money. They want the benefits. And it creates tribalism, which is fracturing us. We could have been building a strong, you know, American Muslim community. And instead, our masjids are filled with people who can't understand each other, don't mingle with each other, don't mix with each other, are not friends with each other. It's just tribalism, you know, going on. And that just breaks up unity. You know, you can have basically, and I covered this a couple of years ago, you can see a society that is multiracial live in harmony if you have a religious culture that unifies it. But you can never see a society live in harmony where cultures are dividing. Because you see a lot of these communities, particularly the Arab ones, they're of all shades, all different types of racial identifications, but they identify with that specific foreign culture, and they separate themselves from others based on that foreign culture. You know, that can never work. There can be no harmony when you have multiculturalism. You have to have a unifying tool, you know, among the people. That's the number one priority. Islam's not the number one priority to a lot of these groups. I've covered their escapades, you know, on this channel many times. the crimes, the drugs, the alcohol, the incarcerations. We see it all over Europe with these immigrant groups. We're seeing it here in America, same thing. You know, it's like Islam is not the forefront of these people's lives. So these imams, they make these arguments on a religious basis. We're not seeing Islam becoming stronger because of this. We're actually seeing the opposite. We're seeing more, you know, balkanization, if you will, in our masjids, in our communities. There's no unity whatsoever. And yeah, sad day for the United States overall. Maybe good for, as I said, for the military-industrial complex and their wars not happening as frequently as the United States descends down. But I still always believed in my heart there'd be a saving that could happen in this country, where we'd be able to really take the government back, slightly at least, be better than what it is, and stop some of these unnecessary wars and all the wicked that this government is doing in our names. But now, I mean, it's domestically, foreign, it's over. There's really no coming back unless this is changed. Dramatic action must take place. All right, questions and comments welcomed. Sister Layla? Because I am unable to read. I didn't see any comments pop up or questions. Okay, there's no questions or comments. I'll go ahead and wrap it up. I guess I was planning on doing, as I talked about last week, a little bit of the history of Saudi Arabia and the Wahhabist movement. Kind of pulled back on that because of the fact that when you bring these issues up, they become so, you know, divisive. People immediately start accusing you of attacking the Sahaba. They accuse you of going after the scholars, all these different types of things. And I decided it probably wasn't the best thing to bring that here. You know, it's really an act of maturity to have these discussions and issues. And I think a lot of people, they're really just not at the stage where they can really do this, you know. And I think it's an issue because we got two issues in the Ummah, as Daniel Haqiqatjou said the other day. Liberalism, which we cover here a lot, and then this fracturing of our communities on the basis of Aqidah, on the basis of interpretations of Islamic texts, on the basis of which scholar you follow. The days of being able to agree to disagree, but understanding that someone's intentions and heart are pure, are gone. You know, now we're in an era where if you slightly disagree with someone, immediately they're calling you a kafir. Immediately they're saying you're this or you're that. You know, the scholars did not behave in this way. You know, of course, core Islamic issues are not for debate. We all accept there are certain issues that are core doctrines that we all must accept. But when it comes to these other areas, you know, you used to be able to have general academic discussions, you know, on them. And those days seem to be gone. People are just so in their camp, my team versus your team. And once you start doing that, I mean, there's no coming back. There's nothing you can say, no amount of logic or reason or fact that really can work. But if Sister Layla's not here and there's no questions or comments, I will bid you guys farewell. Jazakallah khair for attending as always. And always questions, comments are welcomed. You guys have a blessed one. Inshallah, I will see you next week.